From a concrete fortress in New York City that was built to withstand a nuclear attack, and a brand new power plant in China that can withstand almost any disaster imaginable, to a mysterious pyramid in North Dakota that was designed to shoot nukes out of the sky, and a not-so-secret government facility buried thousands of feet below a mountain in Colorado. Here are 10 mega projects that would survive a nuclear bomb. Now, when you think of pyramids, you usually default to Egypt. But what if we told you there was a 4-story pyramid in the middle of North Dakota? Nakoma is a tiny village of only 35 people. It's part of Cavalier County in northern North Dakota, about 30 miles south of the Canadian border. They have a bar, 2 churches, and about a dozen streets in the whole town. But if you look beyond the trees and across the plains, you'll see an abandoned Cold War-era facility called the Stanley R. Michelson Safeguard Complex. Today, most people call it the MSR Pyramid. The complex was a cluster of buildings that shared a common purpose: to bolster the United States' anti-ballistic missile defenses. It featured launch and control centers for 30 LIM-49 Spartan anti-ballistic missiles. The facility cost $6 billion when it was built in 1975. That's equal to about $35 billion today. That included the main pyramid, an assortment of missile launch silos, and dozens of smaller surface-to-air silos equipped with nuclear warheads. The pyramid itself was a PAR backscatter radar site. They designed it to follow missiles from Russia and shoot them down over Canada. But if one of those missiles landed nearby, the pyramid would withstand the blast. That's thanks to the 27,500 pounds of steel and 714,000 cubic feet of concrete. Sadly, the facility only lasted 24 hours. It became fully operational on October 1st of 1975. Then, the House of Representatives killed it on October 2nd. They believed it'd be ineffective, and shooting down nukes over friendly territory was too risky. It technically shut down in April of 1976 after operating for 6 months. Talk about a gross waste of $6 billion. In 2022, BitZero Blockchain Incorporated bought the property from North Dakota. They plan on investing $500 million into the site to convert it into a massive data processing center. In other words, it's going to be a giant Bitcoin mine. Cheyenne Mountain is a tri-peaked behemoth in El Paso County, Colorado. About 10 miles southeast of Colorado Springs, it hosts a state park, an exclusive neighborhood, and one of the most secure military bases in the United States. The Cheyenne Mountain Complex sits about 1,000 feet up a restricted access road. While many people think the complex is NORAD, or the North American Aerospace Defense Command, it only houses elements of NORAD. It's also home to other government agencies like Air Force Space Command, U.S. Strategic Command, and the NSA. Now, some don't think it's operational anymore, but that's also wrong. While NORAD relocated to the Peterson Air Force Base in 2006, the Cheyenne complex stayed up and running. A skeleton crew keeps it on warm standby in case they need it. Every iota of the complex was designed to withstand a nuclear attack. If you've seen the 1983 movie War Games, you'll remember the giant blast doors sealing the inside. They still exist and are still functioning. Each weighs about 25 tons, yet can easily be closed by 2 people. They're designed to withstand any attack: nuclear, electromagnetic, or biological. The facility itself is secured under 2,000 feet of mountain. You have to drive down a long tunnel before you even reach the first blast door. When you get there, you'll find 15 3-story buildings built beneath the mountain. They're protected from seismic shifts and explosions thanks to 1,000 massive springs beneath each building. In the event of a nuclear attack, the complex uses a series of blast valves that keep the air inside breathable. When it comes to water, the mountain takes care of it. The complex keeps 1.5 million gallons on hand, but there's a natural spring within the granite that provides more water than the base uses. Rumor has it there's something shady happening at 33 Thomas Street in New York City. Sandwiched almost perfectly between the Statue of Liberty and the Empire State Building, a windowless 550-foot concrete skyscraper looms over the local community. 33 Thomas Street was built in 1974. It originally functioned as a massive telephone switchboard for AT&T's long-distance service. That's why people called it the Long Lines Building. In its heyday, the brutalist-inspired building handled 175 million calls per day. But think about that date, 1974. It was the Cold War era. The United States and Russia lived under constant threat of nuclear attack. It only made sense that they designed their hypercritical telecommunications towers to be nuke-proof. Now, nothing would survive a direct nuclear blast. So, for this video, we're assuming the blast happens nearby, or at least close enough that it could cause physical damage without eviscerating the structure. With that said, what makes the Long Lines building nuke-proof? Well, firstly, the Long Lines building doesn't have a single window. Aside from some ventilation openings near the top, the entire structure is one giant concrete slab. According to its builder, John Carl Warnecki, no windows or unprotected openings in its radiation-proof skin can be permitted. It looks like a fortress because he built it like a fortress. Not only is it radiation resistant, but it's full of food, water, and 250,000 gallons of oil to power its generators. Sources say there were enough provisions to keep 1,500 people alive for 2 weeks. Today, it's widely believed that the Long Lines building is a secret NSA spy hub hiding in plain sight in New York City. According to Edward Snowden's leaked documents, 33 Thomas Street is codenamed Titan Point by the NSA. The Alps are Europe's tallest and most extensive mountains. They stretch for about 750 miles in a crescent shape across 8 countries: France, Switzerland, Monaco, Italy, Liechtenstein, Austria, Germany, and Slovenia. Zoomed out, they kind of look like a hat on top of Italy. As you can imagine, the Alps make travel between Northern Europe and Italy difficult. Just ask Carthaginian General Hannibal Barca. To solve this problem, the Swiss government built the Gotthard Base Tunnel. At its deepest, the Gotthard Base Tunnel dives 7,000 feet below the Swiss Alps. It took 17 years to complete the 35-mile tunnel, making it the longest and deepest rail line in the world. The Gotthard Tunnel is also open to vehicle traffic, serving as the core of Switzerland's A2 motorway. However, traffic can get pretty congested, especially during the holiday season. Swiss voters agreed to build the $12 billion tunnel in 1992. It took builders nearly 2 decades to blast, dig, and move 73 kinds of rock. Some were as hard as granite, others were as soft as sugar. They removed over 28 million tons of rock from under that mountain. Then, 4 million cubic meters of concrete was used to build the tunnel. That's enough concrete to build 84 Empire State Buildings. But is it big enough, long enough, and strong enough to survive a nuclear blast? Since the Gotthard Tunnel wasn't built with nuclear fallout in mind, we'll have to speculate. If you were standing at its deepest point, you'd likely be safe from the initial blast. You'd only have to worry about being close enough to rattle the mountain and collapse the tunnel. If that didn't happen, your next biggest concern would be radiation. Remember how the Cheyenne Mountain Complex has all those filtration systems? Well, the Gotthard Tunnel is just a long tube under the Alps. It's wide open on both ends and can't filter out irradiated air. You'd wind up stuck in the middle until food and water ran out. Then, without proper equipment, you'd have no way of venturing for more food. About 11 miles south of Omaha, Nebraska, sits one of the most important Air Force bases in the United States. Offutt Air Force Base came online during the First World War. It's famous for building the Enola Gay and Bockscar, the planes that dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Today, Offutt houses the U.S. Strategic Command, also known as U.S. STRATCOM. It's also home to the Doomsday Plane, the Boeing E-4B. The E-4B is a flying government. It offers 5,000 square feet of airworthy office space. It has a secure conference room, media briefing room, and several cots to sleep on. In the worst-case scenario, it's where the president and other federal officials would coordinate war if it weren't safe on the ground. It's basically Air Force One on steroids. As you can imagine, the Doomsday Plane needs to be nuke-proof. Special masks drop in the cockpit to prevent a nuclear blast from blinding the pilots. The windows are also equipped with a special mesh that protects against electromagnetic shockwaves. As of 2023, Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan are the only two presidents who have flown on the Doomsday Plane. Both flights were purely for exercise, though Reagan's flight manifest is mysteriously missing from the presidential daily diary file at the Reagan Library. Nobody knows what he did or worked on during that flight. Because it can be refueled mid-air, the Doomsday Plane can spend 3 days in the sky before it needs to land. According to the Air Force, the US has 4 of these planes on standby. At least one is always ready to go 24 hours a day, 365 days per year. Blue Ridge Summit is a small town in Franklin County, Pennsylvania, about 90 miles northwest of Washington, D.C. It's home to about 900 people and a massive underground government facility that doesn't appear on any maps. The Raven Rock Mountain Complex is a 650-acre campus built on, around, and under Raven Rock Mountain. It dates back to the 1940s, when humans first discovered weapons that were powerful enough to end life as we know it. In the event of a full-scale nuclear attack, the US government would use these bunkers to keep the country running. Raven Rock has everything the government would need to keep going. That's why many people call it the Second Pentagon. The main complex is like a small city built under a hollow mountain. It features 5 3-story operations buildings. Buildings A, B, and C were built in the 1950s when President Truman commissioned the project, and buildings D and E were added later on. The facility also has fire and police departments, medical facilities, and dining halls. This facility was built to withstand nuclear, chemical, and biological attacks. Today, it can hold about 5,000 people in the event of an emergency. Of course, most of those people would be high-ranking government officials. In the event of an attack, it would only take Pentagon officials 40 minutes to reach Raven Rock via helicopter. Once they land, the West Gate is a quick car ride away. If that's blocked, they can easily use the South or East gates to enter the facility. As you would expect, video from inside the bunker is hard to find. Thankfully, we do have a few pictures of what it looks like. For the most part, it's what you'd expect a secret underground bunker to look like. Sleek hallways with stone walls on either side. Some of the coolest shots are those taken when they were building the bunker. Imagine how much rock they had to remove when carving out those massive tunnels. Now, all this talk of surviving nuclear attacks got us thinking. Could a nuclear power station survive the bomb? Like the other structures on this list, we're assuming the bomb went off nearby. One structure with a decent chance of survival is a nuclear power plant on the east coast of China. The Sandman Nuclear Power Station is a 2-reactor facility built between 2009 and 2018. It cost the Chinese government about 50 billion yuan, or $7.3 billion, to build both reactors. The Chinese broke ground in February of 2008. They poured 5,200 cubic meters of concrete into the foundation for the first unit alone. The foundation also required 950 tons of reinforcing and 1,000 anchor bolts. Just look at how much steel goes into building one of these things. A nearby nuclear blast might not wipe the Sandman plant off the map, but how much fallout could it spark? After all, that's what most people would be worried about, right? What sets Sandman apart from other facilities is the fact that it uses AP1000 reactors. These pressurized water reactors offer 3 major benefits: more efficiency, improved economics, and unparalleled safety. There are only 10 of these reactors in operation or under construction in the world. 4 are in China, 2 of which are at the Sandman facility. In the event of a meltdown, the AP1000 design uses the forces of nature to cool itself. Evaporation, convection, and gravity combine to prevent the containment vessel from rupturing and releasing radioactive material. So, if a nuke were to damage the facility and cause a meltdown, the safety systems should be able to prevent further radioactivity. If you dove about 370 feet into the English Channel, you'd stumble upon the Channel Tunnel, the longest underwater tunnel in the world. The tunnel itself connects the French port city of Calais with Folkestone in southern Kent, England. It's the only physical connection the UK has to the European mainland. At its lowest, the Channel Tunnel is 246 feet below the seabed and 377 feet below sea level. About 23.5 miles of the tunnel is completely underwater, making it the longest underwater stretch in the world. What's amazing about the Channel Tunnel is that it's not just one long tube. It's actually 3 tunnels that weave between each other. Passenger and freight trains run on 2 monodirectional single-track tunnels, meaning they only go one way and loop around at the terminals on each end. They intersect every 1,200 feet to allow for changeover. Then, there's a road and maintenance tunnel that runs down the middle. This allows workers to access all parts for maintenance. It also serves as the main evacuation route. Now, you would think that something this high-tech would be a fairly new idea. However, the tunnel concept was first introduced in 1802 by a French mining engineer named Albert Mathieu Favier. It would only take another 192 years to build it. Whether or not the tunnel is nuke-proof is up for debate. Like the Gotthard base tunnel, you wouldn't want to be stuck in the middle. Radiation would pour in on both ends. You might survive the initial blast, but the fallout would reach you eventually. In fact, before the tunnel was even built, the UK had plans to blow it up with a nuclear bomb. If the Soviets ever invaded France, they didn't want them to have a direct line to England. During the Cold War, the United States and Canada developed a series of supercomputers called SAGE, or Semi-Automatic Ground Environment. SAGE took all the radar readings from different sites across the US and Canada and combined them to create one master view of North American airspace. Ideally, SAGE would be able to detect incoming nuclear warheads. SAGE needed to be protected at all costs. So, in the 1960s, Canada set out to build a nuke-proof underground facility called the NORAD Complex North Bay. Locals simply call it the Hole. They chose a spot in North Bay, a small city in northeastern Ontario, about 220 miles north of Toronto. The location had 2 things going for it. First, the area was mostly granite. As long as they dug deep enough, the base would be 100% nuke-proof. Nearby Trout Lake also supplied enough water to keep the complex cool. Workers dug 600 feet below ground to build the bunker that would eventually house SAGE. But that wasn't all. The bunker is large enough to support 400 people for 1 month in the event of a nuclear attack. It had medical facilities, a gym, a cafeteria, even a barber shop. The whole was designed to withstand a 4-megaton blast. That is 267 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. And, in case of a power outage, 2 caches of 194 batteries would kick on until the generator came back online. Now, to access the facility, you'd have to travel down one of 2 tunnels. The first is over a mile long, stretching from the nearby Air Force Base to the hole's front door. The other starts in North Bay and travels over 3,200 feet. The computers were taken offline in the early 2000s as the threat of nuclear war dwindled. In 2012, the location was used for Jeff Renfro's film The Colony, starring Bill Paxton and Lawrence Fishburne. The Three Gorges Dam is perhaps the most important structure in China. It is the largest hydroelectric dam in the world, stretching over 7,600 feet across the Yangtze River. It stands nearly 600 feet tall, and its reservoir extends for 370 miles upstream from the dam. That reservoir holds roughly 10 trillion gallons of water. A catastrophic failure of the dam, a nuclear attack for example, would see all that water released downriver. But, according to Chinese officials, the Three Gorges Dam was built to be nuke-proof. According to the Deputy Secretary General of China's Society for Hydropower Engineering, the Three Gorges Dam would not collapse even after a massive attack. It's made of 27.2 million cubic meters of concrete and 463,000 tons of steel. That's enough steel to build the Eiffel Tower 63 times. Since the early 1990s, Taiwan has been talking about bombing the Three Gorges Dam if China ever invaded. Some believe cruise missiles or F-16 fighter jets could damage the dam enough to burst it. If they were successful, the damage would be catastrophic. The ensuing flood would affect 400 million people. Most of the People's Liberation Army is located midstream and downstream of the Yangtze River. If the dam collapsed, the PLA could lose 90% of its airborne division. But China laughs at the idea. Missiles and fighter jets would need to go through multiple layers of ground and air defenses. The high-strength, reinforced concrete was also built to withstand a small nuclear weapon. If you enjoyed this video and want to see another just like it, then be sure to click the link on screen now. With that, thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in next time.